what has really happened to this process of canonization really in the last 50 years? Can you give us I know you contributed to a book on the new canonization process that Father Crean put together a while ago. But what's your thoughts on what has happened to this process?
Well, we have a real conundrum here because there's a process ever since the popes took charge of the canonization process, and it ceased to be a local phenomenon. And with the local phenomenon, you have some saints, at least, that were dubious. They were just popular in a particular region. But after the popes took charge of the process, then an elaborate investigatory apparatus was set up to determine whether the miracles were authentic, to determine whether there was a real reputation for sanctity, and whether this person should be a model for the faithful. So then the question becomes, what is the point of the process if it isn't to verify the capacity of someone to be elevated to the altars? And if the process is irrelevant, if all that matters is that the Pope says, I canonize you, then why do we have to have a process? So it seems to me the process has become integral to the canonization of a particular person. And if the process is subverted in some way, I'm not saying the person isn't canonized, but a question arises. So the position I took in the essay is not that I can say that a saint isn't a saint, but rather that doubts have been introduced into the canonization process, which is either being bypassed without good cause or has been corrupted by politics. And so if the Pope says at the end of the process, I canonize this person, given the fact that the Church has not infallibly defined canonization as an act of the infallible magisterium, you can certainly raise questions as to particular people. So that's the problem we face now. We have the process. The process has been watered down. And so now we have a question, why have the process? If the process is necessary, don't you have to examine the integrity of the process? And if it isn't necessary, why do we have a process?
Well, maybe if I play devil's advocate, pun intended, some people might say, okay, they've sort of streamlined this process, done it, really quickly. They've cranked out thousands of saints. But is that really a bad thing? What's the big deal here? What if they're saying all these people are saints? Why isn't that a problem? Why is that a problem, having so many more saints declared? I mean, isn't that good? There's just more people to talk about.
Well, when you look at somebody like Oscar Romero, a pro-communist agitator being elevated to the altars, his involvement in politics alone would not make him a model for the faithful. Saints do not become political agitators on the side of communist insurgents. So Oscar Romero is a saint that raises a question. And then we have these dubious miracles that have been insinuated into the process. There's a pattern of a miracle being attributed to a problem pregnancy that results in an intact and completely healthy born child. That happens all the time in hospitals. Doctors predict that this is a serious problem pregnancy. The child will be born with a serious defect, and it doesn't happen. That doesn't qualify as a miracle, evidencing the intercession of a saint. And yet, in case after case, we see a resort to these problem pregnancy miracles. So to get around the requirement of an actual miracle. An actual miracle will be something like what happened with Pope St. Pius X, where, for example, an article of his clothing was placed on the abdomen of an unconscious woman with a massive tumor, and the tumor disappeared instantaneously. That's a miracle.